Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
You'll regret getting married. After burying her daughter, her mother-in-law kept an eye on her son-in-law. And when he told her the date of the wedding, he had been walking down the long corridor of the hospital for 2 hours. Michael had brought his wife in. She was very weak. The doctors did not advise her at first, and then seeing her persistence, forbade her to give birth. With her heart condition, it was tantamount to murder, but she convinced the doctors. "I feel everything will be all right. My intuition has never failed me before." When her husband brought her to the hospital, the doctors asked her just in case. "Michael, anything can happen. You know your wife's health, so I'm asking you now, who do we save if something goes wrong?" "Of course, honey, and you think she can't handle it?" asked in a frightened voice by a grown man. "Michael, with your wife's health, anything's possible, but we'll keep our fingers crossed." It was out of the question that Angela would give birth on her own, so only a C-section. She was covered in sweat, small curls stuck to her forehead. She tried to say something, but she had no strength. She was breathing often, and you could tell from her lips that she was asking, "Soon?" Her beautiful long fingers dug into the snow-white sheet, and she bit her lips so hard from the pain that blood dripped from them. A heart medication was injected into her vein. She began to breathe more evenly and said she felt better. She was given anesthesia and labor began. When the first girl was taken out, the instruments showed cardiac arrest. She became violently ill. A cardiologist was by her side who knew what medications she was tolerating and what needed to be administered to make the labor successful. Everything they could do was done. When the doctors realized they were losing her, they began to save the second girl. 2 tiny droplets, similar to each other, came into the world on Christmas Day. God gave them life, but took the life of their mother. The father was inconsolable. Life with his wife was a blessing. Soft, kind, she loved her husband and was devoted to him with all her aching heart. It was a model family. Sisters took a nanny, a woman of about 50 years old, who was with the children inseparably. They named the girls almost identically, Victoria and Veronica. And since Veronica was too long to pronounce, she was Veronica at home. The nanny quickly learned to distinguish them because she knew one little secret. Victoria, the oldest by 5 minutes, had a small mole behind her right ear, and the younger Veronica had the exact same one, but behind her left. She told Michael this, but he was even more confused. He tried to be home less. There wasn't much Dad could do for the girls, so he plunged into work. He had to provide his princesses with a secure future. So the first thing he did was to buy a huge plot of land outside the city and build a big house. He wanted it to be a family nest. He wanted the girls to live here with their families. Taking this into account, he built a house with 2 entrances, decided so. Victoria has a mole behind her right ear. Her entrance will be on the right, and Veronica's will be on the left. Then everyone laughed at this idea, but when, after 3 years, the mansion was built, everyone saw just a castle for princesses. The entrance consisted of 2 entrances. Above each of them were monograms in the form of letters B and H. It was very unusual. When you entered the doors, there were 2 beautiful staircases on the right and left leading to the second floor. Michael tried to make everything in the house so that his girls were comfortable. After the above events, 17 years passed. The father did not dote on his girls. His life he never settled, did not find a woman who at least a little would be similar to his honey. Daughters grew up beautiful, and father was worried about the increased attention from the male population, and he thought that they should be less at dubious events. If we talk about the characters of the girls, then better than a poet, and cannot say, ice and fire. The eldest Victoria was daring, mischievous, and prone to adventure. The huge world mesmerized and beckoned her to herself, which cannot be said about Veronica. Victoria was told by a gypsy that she was not created for family life, but for festivity and splendor. That her life would be full of adventure and loss, to which she replied that she didn't believe in that nonsense. She was very beautiful. This beauty was so bright, even bold. Despite her still very young age, she had the alluring look of an experienced woman and seductive plump lips. She was not shy to charm and seduce. She never went unnoticed. When not seen by her father, she painted her already seductive lips with bright red lipstick. Combined with her black hair, it looked a little vulgar, but there wasn't a man who would take his eyes off her in a bored way. She saw it, knew it, and sort of teased them by saying, "Yes, I am so beautiful, but I am not yours. I am not so easily obtained, and only your glance is very little to be with me." But for all that, she was an excellent student. She read a lot, and her tongue was so strong that even her father couldn't talk over her. Victoria kept everyone in suspense. Once, the chauffeur who drove him to work came to his father and said that there was no car in the garage. There was no one to take the car except Victoria. When Veronica heard the roar of an approaching motor, she jumped out of the house and ran up to the garage. They stared at each other, one completely displeased with her sister's behavior, and the other satisfied that she could get away with it. "So, where did you learn to drive?" Veronica asked her. But Victoria laughed merrily that her joke had succeeded. From the outside, it was striking that, despite the difference in the expression of their beautiful faces and the apparent recklessness of her older sister, they were alike as two drops of water. Looking at each other, it was as if they were looking in a mirror. Veronica's character was completely different. With the same facial features, the same plump lips, she was modest, quiet, like her mother. She was domestic, the kind of woman one dreams of marrying. Intelligent, beautiful, modest, she had in her blood the care for her family and friends. Veronica was content with her home and family and followed their traditions. The sisters were always very close. The girls loved each other very much, and Veronica was always pulling her older sister out of yet another trouble. She always found a reason to justify Victoria, and without hesitation, took on her guilt. Their father often lectured them, teaching them to be serious and responsible, even when temptations were great. Everything about them was unusual, and sometimes it seemed to those around them that there was one person in front of them. But deep in their hearts they realized that there were many differences between them. The girls finished school, and then their roads diverged. Victoria wanted to enter economics, and Veronica wanted to become a teacher. "Why do you need this pedagogical school? Always these screaming children and miserable salaries. You should go where after studying you can get a good job or even in the firm," to my father. "But teachers are not needed there. Think about it, Dad won't last forever. Who's going to take care of the business?" "I don't know anything about business. Why would I go into it?" "You don't have to know anything about business. You can go to law school and then go to your dad's firm in the law department. That's not helping the family business." At the family council, it was decided that Veronica goes to the university to the law faculty and Victoria to the economic faculty. So the girls went to the same institute, but to different faculties. As soon as Victoria appeared at the faculty, she immediately divided everyone into two camps: outspoken enemies and the same outspoken admirers. In the first group, by the law of the genre, was the entire female student body, and in the second, almost all young people, except those who considered themselves not worthy to be next to such a beauty. But strangely enough, the teachers were also divided into two camps: female teachers, and they were the majority, noted too brazen appearance, hyper self-confidence, frank outfits, and very beautiful appearance. But to be fair, they also noted her sharp mind and cleverness. The first course of the economic faculty practically repeated school subjects, so Victoria did not bother with preparation. She had A's in all seminars and credits. That increased the number of envious people and therefore enemies. She was not afraid of it. She clearly knew what she wanted and went to her goal. In the second year, special subjects were added, and one of them was financial management. Entering the classroom, the teacher looked around the group. On the second row, his attention was attracted by a searing brunette who looked at him with interest. "How do you do? My name is John. I will be reading your course, Financial Management. The course is designed for the whole year, in the summer session, the exam. There are no books on the subject, so the main source of knowledge on the subject will be my lectures. That's all I have so far. If you have any questions, I'll answer them all at the end of the class." And he began the lecture. Victoria wrote something down, but mostly looked at the new teacher. He was a man about 35 years old. She noted that he was only 17 years older than she was, tall and handsome. He reminded her immediately of the artist Kevin Costner. The resemblance was uncanny. She looked at him without taking her eyes off him, which was very embarrassing. He noticed the beautiful brunette. It was hard to take his eyes off her too, but he was more experienced than this girl and could hold his own. He was clearly attracted to her. At the end of the lecture, John, as promised, asked for questions that he was willing to answer. Everyone remained silent, but Victoria decided to ask. Tell me, has anyone ever told you that you look like the artist Kevin Costner? Everyone laughed. A little off topic, but I'll answer so that you're no longer tormented by this question. Yes, it has been said, and more than once. I myself also noticed some similarities, but the most minuscule. Yes, indeed, Victoria said, you are much more interesting than he is, without any embarrassment, she finished. Thank you for your kind words, but that's the end of the matter. If you are not interested in anything else, I'll say goodbye. She didn't write down the lecture, so she took the notes from Steve, who was the one who had the most fun with her. He was outwardly a very interesting guy, but he was too small for her. He tried to please her, he was her slave, and what she needed, with her temperament, was a man. 6 months passed. During this time, Victoria learned a lot about her favorite man, and that he became her favorite, she did not even doubt. He was unmarried. In this place, she sighed with relief. He had a rented apartment. After the institute, he had an internship abroad and lived there for 2 years. She had enough of this information, the main thing in which was that he was free. And she started the offensive, not thinking about the consequences. The sisters went to university by car. Victoria was driving. It was obvious that she liked driving, but as an enthusiastic person, she had exceeded the speed limit more than once. But in some amazing way, without involving her father, she dealt with the situation herself. The winter session was coming up, and Victoria was not nervous at all, because there was no subject that would be difficult for her. She couldn't think of an excuse to be alone with John, but one day she thought of slashing his tires and offering her services, giving him a ride home. She asked the local shepherd, who always hung out around the corner to smoke and drink beer. After paying a little and showing the car victim, she calmly went to lectures. When she left the university, she saw John, who was cutting circles around the car and lamenting about the 3 flat tires. "Wow," Victoria said in surprise. "Who are you so angry with?" "I was thinking the same thing. There were no credits, no exams, even less. No other way than someone fell in love and thus declared his love," John said with a smile. "You say it so confidently, as if it was not the first time." "No, it's not. It is. I was going to offer you a ride home, but now I don't know. You'll think I did it on purpose to get you in the car." "That's exactly what I think. But I'll ask you to drive me home. But please wait, I'll call a tow truck." She was so embarrassed that he had figured her out on the divide. They rode in the car and were silent. "Where should I take you?" Victoria asked. He gave the address. As they drove up to his house, she didn't want to part with him. He felt it. He had the same desire, but John knew it was wrong, that she was still a child and he shouldn't go along with his feelings. He was an experienced man. He had been with women. He knew what they were like, but in this case, he knew he had to stop. Victoria was waiting for John to say thank you and leave, so ahead of him she asked, "What are you going to pay with?" "What do you need? I can offer money." And he saw her pretty face wrinkle. "I can buy you a coffee. There's a lovely cafe around the corner." She shook her head, showing him that it wasn't that. "Then you talk, I'll do it." "Are you sure you'll do it?" And she had the courage to say. "Kiss me." She did not take her eyes away, but looked straight at him. She had the tantalizing look of an experienced woman, her bright lips, attracted like a magnet. He wanted it too, but the fruit was forbidden. And that fueled the passion even more, and he couldn't resist. He pulled her to him, gently at first, slightly touching her face and lips, began to cover her with kisses. From her reaction, he realized that it was her first time. He knew how to bring a woman to ecstasy, and when he felt that she was all his, they merged in a passionate kiss. She was dizzy with happiness. She did not even think that it could be so pleasant. When he wanted to let her go, she didn't let him, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him against her. Veronica loved going to law school. She thought she would regret her career as an educator. But no, she liked student life. Despite the fact that she was as beautiful as Victoria, she had friends, appeared girlfriends, on the background of which her beauty was even more expressive. She was respected by teachers for her intelligence, poise, and excellent academic performance. Many boys liked her, but she herself was not in a hurry with relationships. Her favorite phrase, "all in due time." The second course brought a lot of new subjects, new difficulties, yes, a lot of new things. Veronica sat at the textbooks to understand it all, and once seeing this, her father offered the help of his lawyer, who works at the firm. "He will explain everything to you in simple, accessible language, and examples will be given." Don't say no. It's real help. Veronica was glad for any help, so she agreed. Just before the session, a young man, about 25 years old, wearing glasses that suited him very well, came to them and introduced himself. My name is Jim. I work as a lawyer for your dad, Michael. I'd really like to help you pass the session with flying colors. But now I doubt whether I can do it. Your beauty distracts me and even my thoughts are confused. But I'll get used to it, get a grip on myself, and we'll make it work. With these words, he sat down at the table, laid out his books, and said, I'm ready, ask any questions. Veronica took the tickets and without wasting time, started with the first one. They had been called for lunch 3 times already, but their preparation was going so well that they only came for dinner. Veronica was very grateful to Jim. She was confident in her knowledge and was not afraid of the exam. Jim came a couple more times. There were still some questions, which with his help were quickly solved. The session started. Veronica was prepared, but Jim was worried about his ward, so he came to the university to support her. When she came out with a credit card, where she got an A, he wrapped her in his arms and congratulated her. Flowers appeared from somewhere, which raised the girl's mood even more. They went for a walk along the embankment. The weather was beautiful. I wanted to sing and shout with joy. Jim invited her to a cafe. They drank a glass of champagne, drank coffee, ate ice cream, and Veronica felt so tired that she asked Jim to take her home. At home, she collapsed into bed and didn't get up until lunchtime the next day. She hadn't seen Victoria in a while, so she went to her room to chat. Her sister was still asleep. She laid down next to her and Victoria woke up immediately. Hi sis, with such warmth and love, Veronica said. Hi Nick, how are you doing? How was the session? Before she had even opened her eyes, Victoria asked. I'm fine. I'm passing with flying colors so far. I wanted to tell you that I think I'm in love. What? It's like a dream come true. Who is he? Where did you meet him? My sister started asking with a vengeance. This is Jim, my dad's lawyer. He's been helping me study for my exams. Yesterday he came to cheer me on, and when I got an A, he gave me flowers and invited me to a cafe. He's so gentle, so interesting, and I feel he likes me too. What do you see in that boring guy? I think he's so boring, he's a drag. Veronica stood up abruptly and left her sister's room. She's so abrupt, only her opinion is considered unquestionable. She never learned to consider others. If she likes something, take it out and put it down, and don't give a damn about others. So thought the offended Veronica, wiping away her tears. But Victoria was already running after Veronica to apologize. She realized that she had overreacted. She'd gotten too personal and needed to apologize to her sister. Veronica, honey, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Well, why are you so upset with me? You know me. The tongue is my enemy. I'm sorry. I love you very much. You couldn't hold a grudge against her for long. She was such a suck-up. She could find such words to justify her behavior that Veronica couldn't help but forgive her. I also want to tell you something important and very secret, and Victoria told her about John, which made Veronica speechless. You're crazy. He's a teacher. How are you going to face him in lectures, credits, and exams? He's twice your age. He should be married long ago, and you're still a child. Victoria, you've upset me. I'm gonna be worried about you from now on. Don't you know what a grown man wants from a young girl? I know, Victoria replied firmly. I need it too. I love him and I'm ready for anything. And if you get pregnant, what will you do? This is very serious, sister, so before it's too late in this relationship. You're as boring as your Jim. You don't understand that the heart doesn't take orders. You stop loving him, that's all. You can't tell it to stop loving him. It loves and is ready for any sacrifice, Victoria explained to her sister. After the conversation on raised tones, they went to their rooms. Veronica thought about Jim again, remembered every detail of their walk, and did not agree with Victoria that he was not an interesting person. He seemed to her to be a well-read, cultured man. It was just that he and Victoria had different tastes. Victoria was eager for a closer relationship with John. She gave him a few more rides home while his car was being repaired, and each time she said goodbye, he paid her back with a kiss. Each time they became even more passionate and prolonged, which fueled the passion between the young people. But John knew how to step on the throat of his own song, and that was the end of it. Victoria was angry with him, but could not do anything about it. He didn't call her to his house, citing the disorder of not having a woman's hand in the house. Victoria was ready for the exam on financial management and was not worried at all. She heard whispers behind her back that John was going to give her an A, but she ignored them. When she took the ticket, she did not even begin to prepare, but decided to answer at the blackboard. She answered perfectly. Everyone who sat in the audience mouths dropped open. For the sake of order, the teacher asked her a few questions, which she answered. She left the building and decided to wait for John, but she saw this car, so he wasn't going with her today. Maybe she should get another flat tire. She felt funny that she couldn't think of anything more interesting to do. Getting into the car, she drove home. When John's exam was over, he felt very tired, but after taking a breath of fresh air, he perked up. Noticing that there was no Victoria's car in the parking lot, he felt sad. He would have liked to see her, to praise her for her excellent knowledge. He realized he missed her. Without expecting himself, he decided to call her. "Victoria, I wanted to praise you for your excellent knowledge. I am pleased that you love my subject." "I loved you first, and then the subject," Victoria replied. "You are my favorite student too." "I've never had one and probably never will have one," John said sadly. "It's like you're saying goodbye to me," Victoria asked. "Yes, I'm going abroad tomorrow. I'll be back in September. So goodbye, Victoria." "And what are you going to do abroad?" "My parents are there. They're not young anymore. I have to visit them." "Can I come with you? I'll rent an apartment, and in my free time, we'll go for walks, and you'll show me the local beauties. How do you like my idea? Am I good?" "I don't think it's a good idea, because I won't have time to go out with you. I'll be busy." "Where are you going?" "Spain." "Really? We have a house in Spain. I won't even have to rent an apartment. I'll live at home." "What city are you in?" He didn't want to tell Victoria. Besides his parents, he had friends there, and not just men. He had serious views on Rue. She was a serious and very nice girl. He liked her. John's mom wanted them to be together. That's why pretty Victoria was going to be a bit of a liability. "No, Victoria, I'm sorry, but no. We don't need to see you." "I get it. You have a woman you're going to see, and I'm in the way. Is that it?" She was afraid to answer. "Yes, Victoria, you're right. And besides, you and I aren't exactly a couple. I'm much older than you. You still have a long way to go. Goodbye." Tears were dripping from her eyes. She couldn't see anything and stopped to avoid an accident. "I'm still going to Spain, and tomorrow too. I have my passport and tickets are no problem." Her mood immediately improved, and she drove home. When she went into her father's office, she told him she was going to Spain tomorrow. She would have a vacation, swim in the sea. She had passed the session with flying colors and deserved a vacation. Michael didn't mind. Veronica didn't mind either. There was only one flight to Spain tomorrow, and the tickets were booked for it. She saw John from afar, but she didn't want him to see her. Since they were business class passengers, they boarded without waiting in line, and they had a separate minibus that took them along the runway, and they got on the plane first, because John was flying economy class and they didn't meet. When they got in the air, Victoria told her sister why there was such a rush. She told her that John was on the plane, also going to Spain. She asked her sister to go to their house alone, and she would come over later. She should see where John was going. Veronica disagreed for a long time, but it was useless to argue with Victoria. She ran after John so as not to lose sight of him. He was met by a girl, small in stature, a little pudgy pretty, but she's a long way from me, she thought arrogantly. Maybe it was a sister or an acquaintance. They walked to the bus and Victoria kept up. When they got off the bus, they immediately ducked into a cab. While she was looking for a car, they had already driven away, but she told the cab driver which car to follow. It was getting dark, and when her car stopped, she saw that a completely different person had gotten out of the car they were following. The cab driver had mixed up the cars and followed the other one. Victoria looked around. Everything was unfamiliar. The cab driver was gone. What should she do? The neighborhood didn't look like a rich one. There were small houses around, and she realized that she had to get out of here quickly. She walked in the direction where the cab had gone. She wanted to ask how to get to the bus, but she didn't meet anyone. A group of young men and women were walking towards her, and she asked them for directions to the bus, but she did not remember anything else. She woke up in a dirty shed with a headache and a terrible smell. It was as if there was a toilet nearby. When her eyes got used to the darkness, she realized that she was in a shed with a hole in the roof and a toilet pit next to it. She wanted to get up, but her legs were tied with duct tape. She didn't have her phone, money, or purse with her. Her hands were stiff from the duct tape, so she tried to rip it off with her teeth and free herself. When she freed her hands and started to untie her legs, at that moment a man entered the shed and explained in broken English that she should not hurry anywhere. They have her passport, phone, and money. Where did such a beautiful girl come from? I'm from the USA, let me go. No, we need such a bird ourselves. You'll work and give us the money, but if you dare to run away, we'll catch you and spoil your pretty face. You'll be in trouble. They're already looking for me and they'll find me. So you better let me go. I can give you money. I have a rich dad. If I call him and he'll send it to me. Give me the phone and you'll be rich. No, pretty girl, you'll earn us more with your sweet spot than your daddy will pay us once. So wait for the owner to come and decide. She realized she was in deep shit, and for the first time in her life she didn't know what to do, so she was scared. When she couldn't wait for Victoria by nightfall, she called Michael. Daddy, something's happened to Victoria. I can feel it. Come quickly. I can't do it alone. Michael left on a private flight with the security guys. They had worked in intergroups many times and had solved such complicated and intricate cases that Michael had no doubt they would help. They'd get to the bottom of it faster because they knew what they were doing. Veronica met her father in tears, always saying the same thing, that Victoria was in danger, that she could feel it and she had to hurry. She was taken to show the place where they had parted with Victoria and where she had gone next. After inspecting the place and seeing the many video cameras, they drove to the Spanish police station. After examining the footage, they saw Victoria getting on a bus. They followed the route of that bus, then examined other video footage. Victoria was clearly seen catching a cab. After looking at the license plate number, they quickly found the cab driver who remembered well where he had taken the beautiful girl yesterday. Half an hour later, they were there. The cab driver, with a wary look around, said in broken English to look for sheds in the yards, and here the Spanish police refused to help, saying that the girl is an adult, came here on her own. No one forced her, and attract people do not know what for what. They will not. Michael offered them money, and a lot of money, but they left. The boys decided to go it alone. There were a lot of shabby houses, no different from the barns in the yard, but not so that they could not be examined. It was nearing the end of the day, and the search yielded nothing. Veronica kept calling and asking how he was doing. They sat down on a bench and decided to make a plan of further actions if they did not find Victoria in these barns. Suddenly they saw 5 men coming out of the farthest shed, which they had not yet examined. When they were out of sight, the boys rushed there. The barn was dark and smelled terrible, but they saw Victoria. She was huddled in the corner, screaming in English, "Don't come near me." Then they called Michael, and she recognized him and started crying hysterically. They brought her out into the light. She was covered in bruises and bruises. She was beaten, her clothes were torn, and she didn't fight back. She was raped. We decided to go to the police station and show them what had been done to a U.S. citizen. Oddly enough, the police were not surprised and said, "She came voluntarily to this criminal neighborhood. No one dragged her there. She knew what might be waiting for her there." How could she have known what was waiting for her there? She was looking for a friend. Why didn't she take the same cab back to the city? She saw the neighborhood she was in. She came here on purpose to find adventure. If she'd been kidnapped, there'd be a crime, but here we don't see a lineup. Do you think it's normal for a girl to be in this condition? If she enjoyed the adventure, she wouldn't have resisted. She would have satisfied everyone, and she wouldn't have been beaten up like that. But she was raped. Is that normal in your country? Michael wanted to leave the police station as soon as possible and come home. Veronica met her sister in tears and wanted to hug her, but Victoria pushed her away and ran to the bathroom. 2 hours passed, but the sister did not come out. Everyone started to worry and knocked on the door. Finally, the guys broke the lock and went into the bathroom. Victoria was lying there staring at the ceiling with lifeless eyes. Nothing like Victoria had been 2 days earlier. When she finally got out of the bathtub and changed her clothes, her father decided not to stay here any longer, but to go to the US. Victoria would need good psychological help, maybe even psychiatric help. At home, she locked herself in her room, refused to go out for 24 hours, refused to eat. Her father called their house doctor, a rather elderly woman with a lot of experience. She'd have to see a gynecologist to check for pregnancy, take tests to make sure she hadn't contracted any diseases, and definitely a psychologist. I will recommend you a very good specialist who pull people out of terrible situations. Of course, there is not much good, but do not worry. She is young, healthy, time will pass, and she will come to her senses. She refused to go to the doctor. She was hysterical. So another week passed, but her condition did not improve. The doctor, Jenny, said to give her sleeping pills and take her to the doctor. It's her health. Michael had arranged with the doctor in advance, and when Victoria was brought in, she was immediately admitted, examined, and tests were taken. Blood was taken immediately from a vein so that the tests would be more accurate. When Victoria woke up, she was already in her bed. There is nothing worse than waiting. Veronica was very nervous for her sister. She shrank, never left the house, and kept waiting for Victoria to call her to her bedside. 3 days later, they got a call from the hospital saying that the tests were ready. I'll be able to in a week at the earliest. I'll take my mom out of the hospital, and only then I'll get out. Okay, call me when you arrive. I'll give you the address. John couldn't calm down for a long time after hearing that. Poor girl, what she'd been through. He couldn't forget what Veronica had told him. John arrived as promised a week later. He was worried sick. What would he say to her? How would he comfort her? But when he entered the room, everything became clear and simple. She recognized him immediately and even wanted to smile, but she didn't really succeed. But why was his heart beating so hard? Why were his palms sweating? Did he really have any feelings for her? She was also beautiful, only her current beauty was not so bright, but still she was good. Her eyes were very sad because her heart was sad. Her soul, with sad eyes, was searching among the other eyes for a soul who could hear her sadness and comfort her. He did not see that Victoria, in whose eyes the devils were playing, and every minute in her head were ripening crazy ideas. When he sat down on her bed, she put her arms around his neck and sat there for so long, he felt that she was crying. Come on, why these tears? You have such beautiful eyes, and tears make it hard to see them. She put her palms on his face, looked at him for a long time and kissed him on the lips. It turned out so sincerely and tenderly that John pressed her against him and whispered in her ear that everything would be all right and kissed her too. It wasn't a passionate and long kiss, but it was precious to her. She was coming to her senses and felt loved in spite of everything. Let's go for a walk around the house. I'll take you on the swings. I don't have the strength, Victoria said quietly. And I'll carry you in my arms and put you on the swing. Well, okay, she said, smiling for the long days she had spent in this room. All the household sat downstairs waiting for John to come out and tell them everything. But when they saw him carrying Victoria outside in his arms, there was a silent scene. Everyone turned their heads as if on cue, seeing them off with a look. They walked for a long time until Victoria was cold. Back, she quietly walked by herself. He walked her to her room and put her in bed. She looked up at him and immediately fell asleep. John went downstairs where everyone was still waiting for him. Thank you, John. Veronica thought to call you, and for good reason. Her daughter is better now that you're here. As Michael talked, John couldn't take his eyes off Veronica. How alike you two are, like two peas in a pod. You have a double happiness, Michael. He said goodbye and said he would come tomorrow. All night Victoria dreamed of a gypsy woman who reminded her of their first meeting. That she was the one who had predicted it all for her. Let me tell you another fortune, the gypsy said. No, don't. I'm afraid of you, Victoria shouted. Go away, don't scare me. Veronica heard her cry because their rooms were next to each other. She touched her shoulder and her sister woke up. Her forehead was wet. I'm thirsty, she said. Veronica quickly ran to get a bottle of water and gave it to her sister. Where is John? Victoria asked in a weak voice. He will come later, he promised. It was July outside the window and the weather was like fall. It had been raining since morning and it was chilly. Victoria didn't want to eat, but she was sleepy. Her head fell on the pillow and sleep again took her in its soft and gentle embrace. Again she dreamed of the gypsy woman. Your misfortunes are not yet over, you have. At this point Victoria woke up. She was breathing heavily and her hands were shaking as if she had Parkinson's disease. She couldn't calm down for a long time. Afraid to close her eyes and see the gypsy woman again, who would tell her what trouble still awaited her. Still there was no John. She sat down on the bed, put her feet on the floor, and walked leisurely out of the room. For the first time in a long time, she sat at the communal table and ate lunch. "Why is John gone so long?" she asked Veronica. "Let's call him," she said, and her sister dialed his number. But the subscriber was unavailable. Victoria began to get nervous, crying and saying that she became disgusting to him after the rape. Meanwhile, John's Ford car, following the highway in the direction of Victoria's house, kept to the left side and did not exceed the speed limit. The road was difficult. It was pouring rain. The driver of the truck Gazelle went on the side of oncoming traffic, failed to cope with the control, and collided with the car Hyundai Accent, and that in turn rammed John's car. He made a few circles on the car and drove off into the ditch. Fortunately, the car did not turn over. After hitting his head, he lost consciousness. The doctors arrived, pulled him out of the car, gave him first aid, and took him to the hospital to have a CT scan to rule out brain damage. Only in the evening he was able to call Victoria and tell her what had happened to him. Veronica went to visit the patient, and Jim volunteered to accompany her. John's head was bandaged, but he felt fine. 3 days later, he was at Victoria's, but had to get there by cab. His car was being repaired. He had to wait a bit because she had a psychologist. Victoria looked much better. There was a blush on her cheeks. When she saw John, she smiled her white-toothed smile. There was a sparkle in her eyes. The old Victoria was back. Smart, beautiful, confident girl. There was still a month left before school started, and John had to go back to Spain, but only for a couple of weeks. She was sad and already missed him. She imagined that they would talk on the phone for a long time, and he would finally tell her that he loved her very much. Despite the good relationship, John was afraid of it. The age difference frightened him. Talking at the university, a teacher's relationship with a student would make so much noise. He did not know how to do the right thing, so as not to ruin the girl's life. After all, she had just turned 19. In fact, she is a child. He will still have time to think about this difficult question. But Michael, as if he realized that the young man has difficulties with the decision of the question, and decided to help. "John, do you like Victoria as a woman, or are you just helping her out of her depression?" "Victoria is a wonderful woman. I like her very much. But do I have the right to give her hope? I'm almost twice her age. Why would she need me in 10 years? She'll only be 29 and I'll be almost 50. Do you think I can take advantage of a girl's crush?" It's a complicated question. All I want is for my daughter to be happy. And with you by her side, I see her happy. Let's not rush things. I'm leaving now. And when I return, I'll solve this issue. Goodbye and goodbye to your beautiful girl. Thank you, John, and have a soft landing. John flew to Spain on the day my mom was discharged from the clinic. In the evening, the family gathered around the table. Rue had prepared a delicious dinner. John had bought wine and snacks, and the evening was very hearty and warm and delicious. Rue kept glancing at John, but he avoided looking at her. She wanted him to propose at dinner and tell her parents. But after his meeting with Victoria, he didn't want to rush into it. Something was stopping him from making a final decision about his relationship with Rue. By the end of the evening, she realized that there would be no marriage proposal, and her mood dropped to zero. She left quickly, saying that things couldn't wait. No one held her back or asked her to stay. John walked her to the door and gave her a peck on the cheek and said goodbye. He didn't explain anything to his parents. He had to think about everything himself. At 35, John should have gotten married a long time ago. Victoria was clearly too young for that. She needs to learn. He's sure she's mistaking a crush for great love. A young girl who dreams of the role of a wife very soon may be disappointed in this status. After all, romantic relationships and marriage are far from the same things. There will no longer be secret meetings, kisses with hindsight. There will not be that adrenaline that plays in the blood. Family life will begin, in which everyone has their own responsibilities. The husband to earn money and provide for the family, to do men's housework, and the wife to cook, wash, give birth. A man should make life easier for a woman, and he would do it for sure. But will family life not be a burden for a young girl who has not yet had her fill, has not had her fill? He, as a grown-up man, knows what he wants. The raging hormones have already been experienced. So in a woman he appreciates not only appearance, attractiveness, but rather her inner world, her willingness to follow such values as family, children, home comfort. Victoria is hardly ready for all this. And one more thing worried him. Very beautiful Victoria, of course. Jealousy is peculiar to many men, but when following such a woman, men wring their necks. Peace will not give him peace. Despite the fact that he as a man has become both professionally and financially, and it would seem, confident in himself, the feeling of jealousy is not alien to him. And with Victoria, he would always live like a volcano. So thought John, lying in his room, about his future relationship with Victoria. His thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was Rue. There was no avoiding the conversation, so he answered. Yes, Rue, there's something wrong. Yes, something's wrong. I want to ask you, is there going to be no marriage proposal? Don't feel sorry for me, just tell it like it is. Don't keep me on a short leash or in reserve. You know how I feel about you, and I don't deserve to be treated like I don't exist, and we haven't agreed on anything. John didn't interrupt her, but listened attentively. He realized she was right, but he didn't understand what was holding him back from proposing to her. Rue, give me a couple more days and I'll make up my mind. No offense. Deal? Deal, and she was the first to disconnect. He's back in his head again. Rue is 29 years old. She's a professional, financially independent, self-sufficient. She's a good age to get married and have children. She's a decent person, kind, sincere, loves children. And how does she cook? You can't beat it. She's not beautiful, but she's pretty. Here she is, a ready wife and future mother to your children. What to think? If you marry Ruth, you'll never regret your choice, said the inner voice he always liked to argue with. You've known her for years. She's a trusted companion, and importantly, your parents like her. Yeah, that's true. His mom, Fiona, told him to marry Ruth, that's all. And you like her yourself, because you have to go to bed with her, not your mother, the inner voice advised. Before I met Victoria, I thought I loved her. Well, then it's decided, call and make an offer, commanded the inner voice. I will. Rue is my man, but Victoria will meet her prince. He will be younger, more handsome, and of course he will love her very much, because it is impossible not to love such a beautiful woman. The next day he called Ruth and invited her to visit. Taking her by the hand, he went up to his parents and said, Mom, Dad, I'm getting married. This is my future wife. Do you bless me for my union with her? And his parents all said yes. They decided to get married on New Year's Day. Every year, on the 31st, they would celebrate their family day. Rue was happy because there was no one in her life she loved as much as John. Her dream had come true, and she would soon be the wife sound. She liked everything that was connected with John. John quit the university because he realized that Victoria has no brakes. She will wait for him, worry. He just felt sorry for this girl, who had already been through too much lately. Just before the school year, he called her, congratulated her, wished her success and excellent marks. She spoke to him cheerfully enough, so she was in a good mood. After that, he threw away the old SIN card and inserted a new one. He noted to himself that he did it all with regret, but there was no turning back. They applied to the registry office and began to prepare for the wedding. He moved to live with Rue. She had her own apartment and he had a rented one. They were not going to celebrate a big wedding. They would rather spend the money at a ski resort in fabulous Switzerland. Both were good at skiing, so there were no disputes about where to go. At the Swiss resort, the young couple wanted to celebrate the new year once again. Preparation for the wedding, for the new year, invitations to guests, all this made our newlyweds spin, twirl. But there was really a lot to do. John helped Rue in everything. Friends also did not sit idle. September 1st. Third year, how quickly time flies. The first thing she did was to look at the schedule of the second year to see when she could see John. His class was scheduled 3 times a week. Like us, nothing in the schedule had changed. I'll come by tomorrow and say hello. I miss him, Victoria thought languidly, closing her eyes. She didn't even notice that opposite the name of the subject, there was a completely different name of the teacher. She was so engrossed in the upcoming meeting that she bumped her forehead against Steve's. Look how mature you've gotten. You're so handsome. Look, Steve, you should go into modeling. You look really good. Do you really like me? Maybe we could go out, celebrate the start of school. No, Steve, I don't mean like me. You're handsome, I'll give you that, but you're not mine. As a friend, I'm not giving you to anyone, okay? Got it, Steve said with a faded look in his eyes. While they were talking to Steve, dozens of guys' eyes opened wider at the sight of Victoria, especially the freshman. Pretty girl, what year are you in? The bolder ones asked. Go, you're still small, the girl answered them. The next day, she chose her outfit more carefully. Her makeup was minimal. She knew that John liked it better. As she approached the auditorium where he was to have his lecture, she waited for him. Students came in, many of them she knew, and said hello. But a man showed up. But it wasn't John. He came to the door and asked Victoria, "Will you be coming in?" "No, I'm looking for John." "And who is he?" "I don't know him, I'm sorry." She rushed to the dean's office. "Anna, darling, where's John?" "Well, he quit back in the summer." "He quit? Do you know where he went?" "No, nobody knows for sure, but they say he's done teaching. He's working as a consultant for some firm. I don't know which one." She didn't know what to compare her condition to. She'd been run over by a skating rink. She's dead. She's gone. Is he disgusted with me after what happened? Well, he realizes it could happen to anyone. Not just anyone. It could happen to you. Because you're reckless, the inner voice couldn't bear not to intervene. "You shut up. Nobody's asking you. Without you, it's sickening." Victoria sharply parried him. She didn't want to study anymore today. She went to Veronica's faculty, took her out of class, and they went for a walk, eating ice cream and talking. Yes, talking, because that's what she needed most of all. How could he, Veronica, say nothing and just disappear from my life? "You should call him," her sister advised. She dialed his number, but there was no answer. He changed his As I Am card. "Listen, I know where he lives. Let's go." "Well, let's go," Veronica said reluctantly. She didn't like this situation. It was high time for her sister to calm down and get on with her life. It was not her man. Other people lived in the apartment where the previous tenant had gone. They had no idea. Her last hope of finding John had collapsed. She hadn't gone to the university for the third day, lying with her arms stretched out along her torso. Veronica sat next to her, talking to her the whole time. "Veronica, well, if he didn't want to commit his personal life to me, we could have stayed friends, couldn't we? What do you think?" "I think it's a bad idea." "Why do you think that?" "Because you're not ready for it, and that's just how you keep him in your life with the hope of getting him back. I mean, think about it. Could you handle that kind of friendship? Surely you want more, wouldn't you?" Victoria was silent for a long time and answered, "Yes, I get him with this friendship, and we probably become enemies." "That's what I'm saying." "Veronica, maybe I should find a replacement for him. Why, I have a huge choice at uni." "No, dear sister, you shouldn't. Take a break. Realize the experience. Analyze your former relationships so you don't make mistakes later. Don't get yourself worked up. Do not build yourself a jilted bride, by the way, which you never were. Minimize the tragedy of the situation. Nothing fatal happened. Look, Veronica, maybe I should go to a fortune teller." "Victoria, you're losing your mind. You don't need a fortune teller. John didn't promise you anything. He said you weren't a couple." "Didn't he?" "That's right. That's it. Go back to sleep and go to school tomorrow." "Okay." "Yes, tomorrow for school." "Thank you, sis." "You're welcome." They kissed and left to meet again tomorrow. 5 years had passed since the above events. During that time, the girls had graduated from university and worked for Michael at the firm. Veronica was a senior lawyer in the department, and Victoria headed the economic department, and very successfully. She was a strict boss, sometimes even harsh, but everyone loved her because Victoria was fair. She always helped her employees and noticed good work. Veronica was getting ready to get married. Jen proposed to her, and she gave her consent. Victoria, on the other hand, was never able to give her heart to anyone. She still hadn't forgotten John, even though she hadn't seen him since, and he hadn't made himself known. She searched for him on social networks, but she couldn't find him, even contacted the computer aces, but they said he wasn't registered there. And John lived and worked not that far from Victoria. He married Rue, and they had a son, Ben, and a daughter, Victoria. One day, while sorting through the piles of magazines that were already tumbling out of her nightstand, Victoria saw a 3-year-old family magazine that she bought on an occasional basis. On the front cover, she saw John with his wife and children. Inside on the spread was a huge article about family. "The Art of Being a Family" was the title of the article. Why hadn't she seen this magazine before? How could it have passed her by? Victoria read it several times in a row. A welcoming atmosphere reigns in the family of John and Rue. Their friendly family consists of 4 people: mom, dad, darling daughter Victoria, and son Ben. As the head of the family, John told us he knew his wife from the Institute. He could not resist such a beauty. The wedding was played. Every time reading up to this point, she threw the magazine and began to remember again and again their meetings with John. John's son is 2 years old and his daughter is a year old. So now the kids are 5 and 4. Why did he name his daughter Victoria? Isn't there any other name? So he wanted to leave a memory of her. She asked her father to get John's address from the magazine editor. She just wanted to meet him and talk to him. Dad sent a public relations woman to the magazine. Very knowledgeable, very talkative. Explained the situation to her in general terms. Okay, Michael, I'll try to help you. A week went by and my father had some very interesting information. He didn't know how to tell his daughter. Knowing her impulsive character, he kept postponing the conversation on this topic. But Victoria felt that her father knew something, but she did not tell her. So one day she went to his office and told him she wouldn't leave until he told her. He started by saying that John was a widower. What? What did you say? He's raising the kids alone. Victoria, sit down and calm down. That's why I didn't want to tell you as long as possible about this. Enough, Dad. Talk to me. I'm already on edge. Her father, knowing his crazy daughter who paced the office from corner to corner, asked her to sit down and not to rush him. Taking a deep breath, he began to tell what he had learned about. 3 years ago, his wife, Rue, was the editor of this magazine. She was described as a good person and knowledgeable. 3 years ago, she was in an area contaminated by radiation with other staff members. Rue decided to interview those who were left to live with their families in those areas. There was a terrible mortality rate there, especially child deaths, but people had nowhere to go and stayed in their homes. There was a huge article about these families, children in her magazine. The authorities, before this article, did not want to recognize this problem, and Rue disrupted this anthill, and these families began to help. But after a year, she started to feel bad herself. At first, she wrote it all off as fatigue, but when it became unbearable, she went to the doctor. She was diagnosed with cancer, already at the 2nd stage. She underwent surgery, and a year later she relapsed. After more surgeries and chemotherapy, she died last year. John was left with 2 children. Since his parents are in Spain, Rue's mom came to visit him. She now lives in his house and helps with the kids. He works hard. You have to support the house and the 2 children. It's all very difficult. That's about it, I guess. Did she get an address or a phone number? She did, but I don't think you should call him, let alone go to its house. The kid's grandmother might not like it. It hasn't been that long yet. Wait, don't rush him. Dad, I want to offer to help. Victoria, you know you can't do anything to help. Distracting him from the kids, making him nervous, yes, but he doesn't need that yet. Everything is still fresh in his mind. Victoria knew her father was right, but she was afraid of losing him again. A man like that would never be ignored by a woman, but she decided to wait. A couple of times she drove to his house and saw him from afar. She saw how the children greeted him, how Rue's mother walked with them, but she was smart enough not to get out of the car, but to watch from the sidelines. 6 months later, without saying anything to her father, she drove up to his house, and when she saw him getting out of the car, she went out to meet him. Well, hello, John. How long I've waited for this meeting. But if you tell me to leave now, I won't be here again. Hello, Victoria. No, I won't. I'm very happy to see you. Come on, I'll introduce you to my children. Is this convenient? Am I disturbing anyone? No one, is fine. Seeing the beautiful woman, Rue's mother went into the room with her lips pressed together. The children surrounded their father, and it was obvious that they were happy to see him. Children, this is my friend Victoria. Benjamin was the first to be introduced. Beautiful, just like a princess. I'm Benjamin. My dad and grandma call me Ben. What can I call you? What do you like? Ben sounds soft and affectionate. I think I'll call you that too. It's a deal, answered the boy. And little Victoria hid behind her daddy and didn't want to go near a strange aunt, even though she was beautiful. But Victoria gave her a doll and the child gave in. All the rest of the evening, she sat in the arms of a strange aunt. Then everyone drank tea, but John's mother-in-law never came out, though the children called for her. The children had to go to bed, and Victoria went home. Will you be coming again? Asked Ben. If your daddy lets me, I'd love to come. Daddy will, said John. He walked Victoria to the car, and they said goodbye. As soon as John entered the house, his mother-in-law flew up to him and started to complain that you've already forgotten your wife, got yourself a woman, and even brought her home. You've forgotten my daughter quickly. It's not even been 2 years since you went out with women. Maria, don't say things you don't know. Victoria is an old acquaintance of mine, former student. I've never forgotten Rooks, and I never will. So why did she come to our house? Swear to me that you have nothing to do with her. My mother-in-law asked in a raised tone. Well, first of all, I'm not going to swear anything to you. She came to my house. And secondly, my friends can come to me, or I have to ask your permission, who can come to me and who cannot. I am an adult, and I will decide who I want to socialize with and when. I am very grateful to you for your help, but if it is in exchange for control over my private life, I'd rather put my children in a daycare center. Maria was afraid that her son-in-law could deprive her of communication with her grandchildren and lower the degree of claims. You do not take offense at me. It just hurt for my daughter. Just she died, and you've already found another. I've said it all, Maria, and I won't go back to this conversation. I told you before, and I'll tell you now, if there's a woman my children will love, she'll be my wife. Of course, I won't be single all my life, however much you may wish it. That said, I don't forget Rue for a moment, and I am very grateful to her for the years we have been together. The week passed quietly. Victoria didn't come or call. On Sunday near noon, she arrived and invited me to take the kids for a walk. There's nothing for them to do outdoors. It's cold out there, they can catch cold, said the mother-in-law, as always loudly and with an irritated intonation. Hello, and we'll go to the shopping center. It's warm there, a lot of entertainment. I think the children will like it, said Victoria in a calm tone. Who are you? She thinks. Maria teased her. Your opinion is nobody here. But John came up and the mother-in-law faltered. John told the kids to get dressed. We're going out. Yay, shouted the children. Sure, Grandma loved them, but they had been at home all week, walking around the house. They understandably wanted entertainment. While riding in the car, Victoria talked to Ben. He knew a lot of fairy tales, talking about good and evil. But he didn't know letters, he couldn't read, and he was already 6 years old. Victoria was still a little girl, but it was time for her to study a little too. John, you have to put kids in daycare. They don't socialize with their peers. They don't do anything but read fairy tales. That's good, but it's not enough. Children need to develop. John said nothing, but realized that Victoria was right. When they arrived, they went to the children's entertainment center. The kids were playing there and Ben came up too. At first he watched and then he wanted to play too. He started pushing the kids to get into the center. The kids didn't like it and they started pushing him too. John wanted to intervene, but Victoria stopped him. This is what I told you about. He doesn't know how to play in a group because he doesn't socialize with his peers. Take your time, let him try to solve the problem. But the kid took offense and ran to complain to his dad. John explained to him as best he could that he was wrong. We arrived home in the evening. The children were happy, though tired. In parting, Victoria told him to think about her words. John found a private kindergarten and put the children there. But it cost him part of his life and health. At home there was a huge scandal. Mother-in-law did not try to restrain herself and was not shy in expressions. This girl sang in your ear that the children should be given to a kindergarten, right? I can see right through that bitch. She wants to get into bed with you, so she's all about the kids and you. But I ain't gonna let that happen. Next time, she'll be out of this house like a cork out of a bottle. That could be your mistress. Why did you name your daughter Victoria? So you wouldn't forget about her. Isn't that a steep price to pay, Maria? You're a smart woman and of course you want the best for your grandchildren. Do you think they need to socialize with their peers? Do they need to know something other than the fairy tales you read to them? Do they need to be ready for school? Why don't you tell me I'm wrong? That's just it. And about the name Victoria, that's what Rue called her and you know it well. My mother-in-law didn't say anything and left, slamming the door. The children liked the kindergarten very much. Only the teacher complained that Ben hurts the children if they don't give him a toy. The kids complained to their parents, and they complained to me. I explained to him how to behave, but he was very offended and all day long, you see, he sits in the corner. You can talk to him at home. John didn't think Victoria would be so right. 6 months of struggle with Ben and the problem of how to behave with the boys. Then the teacher will tell John, we won. He started to communicate with the kids and they've accepted him. I'm so happy for the kid. He did it. John was also proud of his son, but he was even more grateful to Victoria. Veronica and Jim's wedding day was approaching. John received an invitation. They entered the wedding hall with Victoria. She was over the moon. The wedding was grand. There were not many people, the closest and friends, but it was a lot of fun. Songs, dances, toasts. John made a very beautiful toast. Weddings are special celebrations. Beautiful, unforgettable. Many people say that after the wedding from the relationship leaves all the romance and remain only gray everyday life. I would like to tell you that everything depends only on you. Remember this always, because how you will build a family life, such it will turn out as a result. Happiness to you, and let the flame that burns between you never disappear. Bitter. She'd never dance with him. And now he asked her to dance and in her ear told her thank you for having her in his life again. His arm was around her waist, and he held her tightly in his embrace. She was only afraid that the music would end quickly and he would rush home to his children, but she reassured herself that now he wouldn't be lost for so long, especially if he didn't want to be. She had much to ask him, to find out how he had lived all this time. But she had grown up, had become more mature, and was waiting for her time. She knew it would come soon. The house was more crowded. Jim came to live with his wife, even though he had a nice apartment. They were together 24 hours a day. At work, Veronica was his subordinate, and at home, Jim obeyed Veronica in everything. But her sister wondered how they didn't bore each other. I guess that was love. Veronica was a wise and patient woman. All the sharp corners she smoothed with one word and always said that the man in the family, Jim. This gave the husband confidence in himself, and he thanked Veronica for it. As soon as Ben's kindergarten was going well, Victoria offered to hire a teacher to prepare him for school. I have an employee in my department, Ariana. Her mom is an elementary school teacher, but she is retired. She could come to Ben's house once a week, say on a Saturday, and tutor him. Victoria would have to study too, but since she's younger, they have different curriculums, I guess. But I think Victoria will hear and see everything, and it will be good for her too. I understand that it is difficult for you to provide for 2 children alone, and these services have never been cheap, but I can help you by giving you a bonus on top of Olga's salary, which will be a payment to Mom for Ben's education. Victoria, thank you, but it's not necessary. I make good money and I can pay my son's tuition. Don't humiliate me. I'm a man. I've always felt responsible for my family and my children. No offense, John, but I mean well. Then I'll make the arrangements and we'll start school on Saturday. Thank you, Victoria. You've been a great help. On Saturday, as arranged, Selena came to Ben's house. He liked her immediately. As Victoria had expected, her daughter stood like a tin soldier and absorbed what the teacher was saying to Ben. Only Maria was not satisfied. The children are bored with their lessons. They taught and taught, as if they would never learn everything at school. But when in a month both children knew all the letters, and Ben was already reading syllables, she cried, hitting him on the top of his head and saying, "What a good boy you are. You're just like your mommy. She'd be proud of you." 6 months later, Ben was reading remarkably well, counting to 20 and solving simple examples. The child learned to retell what he had read. It developed his speech and increased his vocabulary. The question of choosing the school came up. There was a school in the cottage village, but John wanted a more prestigious one. Victoria advised him to give him to this school, which is not far from his home. If your mother-in-law gets sick, if you are on a business trip, the child will be able to get to school on his own. It's quiet here, there's security, no strangers' cars. Selena will also come, at first, to help the child to do his homework. And in 4 years we'll see. John agreed with Victoria's arguments, and Ben went to the school near the house. Everyone came to see him off to the first grade, his grandmother, sister, father, and Aunt Victoria. The child was very happy, felt supported, and was not afraid of anything. Little Victoria was raring to go to her brother. She wanted to stand next to him and hold his hand. Finally, John let her go, and she went over to Ben and stood beside him. She didn't want to go home, so she went to class with him. Then they were brought home together. The first day there were no lessons, and there was a holiday knowledge day. At first, Maria saw him off and met him from school, and after 2 months he already went on his own with other children. Selena came to Ben, did lessons with him, and was very pleased with her student. John saw that it was hard for her to come to her son every day, and he offered her to live in the house, and on Saturday he would take her home. She agreed, Because she already wanted to refuse from lessons, age was making itself felt. Maria at first sulked, even did not talk, but seeing the peaceful and calm character of Selena began to soften. They talked a lot about life, went for walks, drank tea, and the mother-in-law was glad to have such a neighborhood. Victoria and John were very timidly establishing relations. She was sure that the relationship with a man would bring her what she needed: love, tenderness, attention, all that a woman gets when she is loved. She did not show haste in activity. After all, sometimes a woman herself begins to rush events or worse, to lead the process, which is very frightening and repulses the man. Being an adult lady, she did not rush events, did not push the man, and gave him the opportunity to understand his feelings. She did not call him first, did not impose meetings. She waited for activity on his part and was afraid to frighten that fragile happiness, which she smiled after 5 years. She realized that after a few meetings she should not treat it like she was marrying him tomorrow. She was very afraid of hurting his feelings for his ex-wife. That was another reason that kept her in no hurry. She didn't want to take up all his free time and space with her. She also realized that a mature man doesn't show his feelings immediately, and John was far from being a boy. Despite her mother-in-law's displeasure, they met, went to the theater, movies, gave time to their children, who missed their father very much, but were not in a hurry to go to bed, although both of them wanted it very much. Ben finished the first grade. He studied easily. Selena praised him very much. John thanked her for her work, for her warm attitude to Ben, gave her a salary, a bonus, and let her go on vacation. It was almost a year and a half after their meeting, but nothing had moved forward. John did not make any steps for rapprochement, and Victoria lost hope for personal happiness. She decided to go on vacation to a warm land, to bask in the sun, to think and maybe start a new life, a whole new one, without John. Took tickets and flew away. The sea, the sun, the white sand was beautiful. How nice to be on vacation. She only now remembered that she hadn't been on vacation for 2 years. Work, her new position, all her time. She slept as peacefully as a baby. It had been 10 days since she'd been in this magical place, but it was as if she hadn't rested yet. One day she dreamed again of a gypsy woman from that distant time. This time she was friendlier. "Well, are you afraid of me? I remember you screaming and crying so I wouldn't scare you. Everything I predicted for you came true. Now I can tell you what's next for you. You want some? No, don't. Let everything stay the way it is. What's to come is what's to come. You once told me I wasn't cut out for married life, but I think you were wrong about that. I want to get married. I want kids, but I can't. Well, there are single people. Don't worry, you won't get married for a long time, but everything will end well. And most importantly, you're in for a big surprise. You have no idea, but it's gonna bring you joy." And she was gone. Victoria opened her eyes hard. Her head ached a little. She decided that she would not go to the beach today. She took a shower, ate breakfast, and felt better. "No, I'll go to the beach and lie down at least in the shade. Get some sea air." She dozed off again and woke up to someone looking at her. When she opened her eyes, she saw John looking at her and smiling. "Well, you wanted to run away and I found you here. Why did you disappear so suddenly? I thought I would never see you again. I thought, well, I can't wait for John to be nice to me. I've got to do something about it and start living without him. Get used to everyone going their own way. No, Victoria, we'll go together if that's okay with you." "No, I don't mind because I love you." Ben graduated from elementary school with an honorable mention. It was a great credit to Selena, who taught him so much. My daughter finished 3rd grade. John and Victoria decided to give the children a party. They invited friends and girlfriends from school, invited clowns, set the tables right outside. The children had fun, and in the evening there was fireworks, a very beautiful sight. It was getting dark. Parents came for the children and took them all home. The holiday turned out to be a glory. Even Maria liked it. Victoria wanted to go home, but John offered her to stay and go only in the morning. But Maria also put her 5 cents in. Late for children, and for adults, it's not too late to go home, especially by car. In no way. She did not want another woman to be next to John. Victoria didn't argue, packed up and left. As she passed her mother-in-law, John heard her, "Thank God she's gone, or she'd be here all night. As long as I'm alive, no woman will come here." John realized he had to consummate his relationship with Victoria. The kids adored her, and she was great to them too, so she was no mom to the kids. With these thoughts in mind, he drove to her place. On the way, he bought flowers, stopped at a jewelry store, and bought a ring. The closer he drove to her house, the more his heart pounded. Almost 6 years had passed since Rue's death. He'd never had a relationship with anyone but Victoria. He liked her then, he still does. But did he love her? Yes, he knew he did. Fear of losing her speaks to his true feelings for this woman. He has a desire to protect, pity her, care for, and defend her. It speaks of love and tender feelings for her. He sincerely admired his Victoria, and except for her, he did not need anyone. She was a sensual woman, is a real gift for a man. She was always emotional and lived with an open heart. She wanted love from him, tenderness, and she liked to express her feelings in a physical way. Kissing, hugging. It was nice to feel how she reacted to his touch. She was always trembling, and that made him delighted. Yes, she was a gorgeous woman. That's what John thought as he drove up to her house. Seeing John with a bouquet of flowers from the window, Victoria nervously paced the room, anticipating soon changes in his personal life. And she was not mistaken. Right from the door, handing her a bouquet of flowers, he gave her a ring and called her to marry. She hung on him with joy, and covering his face with kisses, repeated, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." She did not let him take off his cloak. She embraced him and did not want to let him go. Why did the tears flow so much? Why did my eyes sting so much? The mascara. It smeared on her face and made her look ugly. Don't look at me. I'm ugly now. You never were, but now you're the prettiest and happiest, my girl. And finally, he let himself relax and kissed her. How long she had waited for this. I'm the happiest woman in the world. You understand me, the happiest. Of course I understand, because I'm just as happy. Come on, let's go tell Daddy. Michael was working in his office and was happy to see John. Daddy, John proposed to me and I said yes. I'm about to be married to the best man in the world. Will you bless us? How can I not when my daughter is the happiest she's ever been? That's the most important thing to a father. Veronica and Jim came over and congratulated the newlyweds. Veronica moved quietly. It was hard for her. She was about to give birth to twins. Men. Jim was happy to be the father of 2 sons. John, please move him into our house. I found him a good English school. I think Victoria should stay with Maria for now, because it would be cruel to deprive her of her grandchildren so abruptly. Friday night, we'll all visit her. It's a long winter vacation. We'll be together too. And as soon as she finishes 4th grade, we'll put her in Ben's school. I think we should do that. I'll think about it, John said, how to do it without offending anyone. I'll go. I have to talk to my mother-in-law. I don't think she'll be as pleased as your dad. They kissed and he left. But your son-in-law is a young man. He needs to raise children. The girl needs her mother. Soon she will have questions that can only be answered by a woman. She will not be able to say everything to Daddy, and Victoria she loves. My daughter, on the other hand, if left alone, would never marry. She'd be faithful to that scoundrel. So why does he have to marry? Maria, you can't even control yourself when you talk to me now, and you're calling John names. That's not the dignity of a grown woman. And as for your Rue getting married, I'll tell you this. It's harder for a woman with 2 children to get married. It's not just her desire. There must be a man who loves her and her children. And then a woman has a very short reproductive age, and men want their children. That's why your son-in-law is marrying a woman half his age. If you love your grandchildren and want to continue to communicate with them, if you value the memory of your daughter, do not persecute the man she loves so much. Your son-in-law is a decent man, an excellent and caring father. For 6 years, he's kept your daughter's memory alive. He has a right to be happy. Don't interfere with him. I would advise you to be kinder to him, more compliant, and you will spend your whole life near your beloved grandchildren. Patience and wisdom. That's not what I expected from you. I thought you'd support me. What am I supposed to do? Bless him or something? Well, at least stay out of his way. Okay, Selena, thank you for the lesson. I understand. And she went to her room to prepare for her final battle with her son-in-law. She decided to take the children to her village, and before leaving to call the guardianship authorities, let them come, ask the grief-stricken man, "Where are your children?" Let him answer if he can. Of course, she realized that the children will not take away from him, but the nerves of him. She will fray his nerves before the wedding. My poor daughter, if you knew what is happening in our kingdom, she cried looking at the picture of her daughter. She called the guardianship authorities, told them about the children, where half of the information was taken from TV series, asked when they could come and see all this. The lady with the squeaky voice said she'd get a call back. The next day she got an early call back before John had even left for work. She was afraid he'd figure it out, so she went up to her room to talk. "Hello, Maria," squeaked the same familiar voice. "Karen will be able to come over tomorrow afternoon. Have a good day." She heard the beeps and disconnected the phone. To be honest, she regretted her action. She was scared. But it was done, and there was no further to go. The next day, as soon as John left for work, she did not clean up the table, but on the contrary scattered the children's things and left with the children to their village. The inspection came when no one was home. After waiting for a while, they saw a car pull up to the house, and out of it came an imposing man. The women looked at each other and, as if on command, began to tidy themselves up. One fixed her hair, another raised her bust higher, and the third looked in the mirror and painted her lips. Lined up, they waited for the man to come closer. "John? Good afternoon. We're from Child Welfare. May I speak to your children and see their living conditions?" He immediately realized that this was his mother-in-law's last effort before he got married. She didn't understand anything. "All right, come on, I'll show you around." The youngest Ruth gave a thumbs up, looking at her friend. "Oh my God, what a man." As he opened the door and let the women in, he was surprised that no one was home. "Where are your children?" the most experienced woman asked sternly. She was older than the others in age and apparently in position. John realized that if he said "I don't know," they would immediately give him a verdict. Bad father who doesn't look after his children. To gather his thoughts, he motioned for everyone to sit down and said, "He and Maria are out for a walk. She is the grandmother, the mother of his ex-wife. And where they are walking, you can call them, invite them home. We want to talk to them. While you're calling them, show them your children's rooms." And they followed John up to the second floor of the house. The children's rooms are always such a mess and 3 layers of dust, and she ran her finger along the shelves where the children's books and toys were. No, of course, apparently the grandmother was in a hurry to go out with her grandchildren and didn't tidy up the rooms. "I see," Heron said in a snide and gravely voice. "So we'll wait for your children today." "No, my mother-in-law's cell phone is not available." Too bad, too bad. I'm gonna have to terminate the parental rights of a father like that." "What was that for? Dust on the shelves? Don't you ever see that in your house?" "Don't be rude, my dear. It could cost you." "Are you threatening me?" "No, of course not, but I'm telling you how this could end. Tomorrow, early in the morning, we'll come again." And they walked out of the gate in a single file. John called and asked me to come over today and clean the house. He said to bring a helper with him so that everything would be clean today. He waited for them and went to the village to pick up the children. He was sure that his mother-in-law had taken the children there. An hour later he was there. The children were about to go to bed. "Quickly gather their things and get in the car," the father commanded. The children were happy to see him and quickly ran to the car. Maria stood on the hood and looked at her son-in-law with bulging eyes. "I don't want to see in my house anymore. You have no place there." "Rue, probably in the coffin turned over in the coffin from your prank, but it won't change anything. The wedding is in August." As they drove off, through the rear window he saw Maria running after the car, waving her fists. She came to his house again in the middle of the night. When he opened the door for her, she walked with her head down and went up to her room. At precisely 9 o'clock in the morning, the women's team came to John's house in the same formation. The children were already eating breakfast when the guests entered the house. After talking to the kids, they went up to their rooms again. After looking at the perfect order, they went downstairs. "Well, John, we liked everything. You seem to be a good father, or rather trying to be one. It is commendable. We'll come back and see how the children are growing up. Goodbye. Good luck to you." Rue looked at John with eyes that said more than words could say, but John didn't pay any attention to her, and they left. John decided not to be the first to start a conversation with his mother-in-law. Maria, after a phone call with her friend and a check from the guardianship authorities, started it herself. "John, I've been thinking a lot about the rest of our lives. You're free to do what you want. I've realized what I've been saying is resentment for my daughter, jealousy. I even confessed to you that I called the child welfare authorities to take the children away from you. Then I thought about my daughter. She wouldn't forgive me. She loved you too much, but it was too late to cancel their visit. I thought long and hard about whether to tell you, but I figured if I didn't, it would be a sin on my soul. I was gonna give you a heart attack, but I was gonna call an ambulance later. My hands were shaking when I poured that medicine in your tea, but I couldn't. The kids ran up to you and hugged you. I thought if God took their mother from them, what am I going to do with them as orphans? I can't lift them up and make them happy. I poured out the tea. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry I overreacted. I'll tell you right off, I hate your Victoria and I never will. She took my daughter's place undeservedly, but I'll put up with her for the grandchildren. I'd rather you were a widower, but I realize you're a young man and you need a family. Tonight we're closing this subject and burying the hatchet. For the sake of my grandchildren, I'm ready to step on the throat of my own song. Thank you, Maria, for your candor. I want to tell you that the wedding is scheduled for the end of August, because then we will go to my parents with the children. They haven't seen them for a long time and miss them. The mother-in-law cried and with the words, "Do as you please," went to her room. The wedding day came, the most unforgettable day in the life of newlyweds. Such a holiday happens once in a lifetime, and the happiness it brings lasts a lifetime. For Victoria, the white dress, the flowers, the ransom, all these wedding trappings did not matter. It was important for her to hear John say yes when he answered the question, "Do you, John, want to take Victoria as your wife?" After all, it would be said in front of all the guests and witnesses, and it is nothing less than a declaration of love, and it is the most beloved tune to her ears. For them, this was a momentous day. This is their first and main love ball, which will be remembered forever and will open a new life for them, a family life. John kept his eyes on her. "You embarrass me. You have no idea how proud I am when other men turn around and look at you. My vocabulary is so poor that I can't tell you how amazed I am by your beauty." Standing at the check-in, Victoria heard, "God, such a beauty." Such an old chose on the voice. She did not recognize who it was and did not turn around. But she heard the answer and recognized the voice of her beloved sister. He is the love of her life, and she doesn't need anything else. Victoria noted to herself, "Well done, Veronica." She said everything right, and she pressed closer to John. The mother-in-law didn't come to the wedding. No one asked her to come. She would only spoil everyone's mood, though everyone sympathized with her grief. The children were a few days late for school and stayed with their grandparents. After the wedding, Maria calmed down a bit and treated Victoria as a member of the family. Both young families lived in the house as Michael wanted, and he built this huge house for this purpose. Victoria and John had a baby girl. They named her Rue. After that, Mary thawed and gladly took care of the child, although in fact she was a complete stranger to her. Vykachka and Ben went to an English school. John's daughter called Victoria Mom, and Ben got it once in a while. "Mom, I'm already late for school," and then Aunt Victoria. But she didn't take offense. Ben remembered his mom, and maybe it was hard for him to call someone else that warm word. Michael had retired, and the two sons-in-law ran the firm. The house breathed happiness because it was filled with children and love.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.